This is the One Point Podcast, and I'm Rohit Yadav. Last September, we published a unique report called Diverse by Default, in which we explored the what, the why, and the how of the diversity topic. We all know the what. It's the lower funding to diverse founders, founder experiencing challenges in fundraising. We also understand the why. Diverse teams make better decisions and also better investments leading to better innovation and business outcomes. But we needed to build and implement the how. In the last year's report, we surveyed and interviewed around 40 ecosystem players, investors, founders, and operators to find a pragmatic approach, tangible methods, and productive frameworks. Now, 1 year later, I'm interviewing VCs who have topics like diversity, overlooked founders, underrepresented founders, immigrant founders embedded in their investment thesis and explore together what has really changed in the ecosystem. And to discuss all of this today, on today's episodes of the One Point Podcast, we have a perfect guest with us, Til Klein from Identity.vc. Til, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. And before we start explaining the topic, let me introduce Til to you all. So Til Klein is a German entrepreneur and investor based in Switzerland. He's also the co-founder and general partner of Identity VC, which is Europe's first venture capital fund dedicated to investing in early stage LGBTQ plus led startups in Europe and beyond. So previously he started a fintech startup named as Vantic. Please let me know if I'm pronouncing it right. And served as managing director and partner at the Boston Consulting Group. He lives in Zurich with his partner and their dog. So Til, as a first question, please introduce Identity VC to the audience, your motivation to start Identity VC, and what is the bigger vision here?
Sure. Happy to do so. Maybe give you a bit of background. What was the history of Identity VC is that kind of me and my co-founder Jochen, we met a couple of years ago. And at that time, I was a founder looking for capital, and Jochen is an investor, a family office investor, and does VC investing. And we both came across an organization in the US called Angels, which invests in LGBTQ founders. And we, even back then, we had the discussion why there's nothing similar in Europe. And so since then, we've discussed that once in a while, but never acted upon it. And last year, we again had that discussion and said, okay, now or never, if there's nobody else doing it, it's obviously on us to do that. And that was the start of Identity VC. And so we are trying to bring LGBTQ investing to Europe. And the underlying hypothesis is the following, that innovation comes from questioning norms.
True.
And who is better positioned than questioning norms than the LGBTQ community? People who have done that before in their personal life. So they have the founder gene, the attitude or this experience to question norms. And that makes us convinced that LGBTQ people are good founders. We call it born to disrupt.
Wow. Okay.
And kind of that's kind of the idea of Identity VC. And you were referring to what's the broader vision.
The broader vision, yes.
Yeah, of course it's, so we are at the very beginning, and that's just the start. But of course, we are here to stay, and we want to build a family of funds and ideally create successful LGBTQ founders who then can become role models for other founders and inspire them to take the same step, to take the same risk. And if we can push diversity forward in Europe and contribute to a more diverse startup and VC scene, then we are getting closer to what our vision is.
Awesome. Good to hear. If I understand correctly, so you started last year, right? What has your experience been running Identity VC since last year? If you can elaborate on that.
Sure, sure. So actually, we started last year, means we actually started with the idea. So it was
Okay.
in spring last year when we started, and so we did a first closing in May this year, and
Congrats.
so thank you very much. And we also did some investings, and so far the experience has been honestly overwhelming and beyond expectations from investors, from other VCs, but also from startups. So only very, very positive feedback and a lot of support. There's many people just love the idea and support us. And yeah, that makes it great fun.
Wow. And the support you mentioned from the startup side and other VCs, how has the support been from the LPs, right? Because they are the people who are kind of guarding the money capital, right?
Yeah.
So, what has their attitude been towards your fund?
First of all, kind of, we might have chosen a better time to raise a new fund. That's we put a little bit of challenge on that because easy,
Mhm.
everybody can easy. So let's take a bit of a challenge. But given the fact it took us 9 months to for the first closing, which I think, given the market environment, is pretty good. When it comes to LPs, who are all LPs? Or it's primarily family offices and high net worth individuals. And why do they invest in identity? It's not for charity purposes. It's definitely for return purposes. So social impact is the cherry on the cake, but they invest because they believe in our thesis that diversity drives performance. That means diversity is a business case, and
True.
thus it is an investment case.
Okay. Makes sense. So I think your previous employer, BCG, also came out with a report recently in March, I think, 2024, regarding private capital and diversity. And they also highlight the same thing. So it's not just about social impact, it's kind of cherry on top, as you mentioned. It's more about the IRR, the returns, and so on.
Absolutely.
So moving on regarding the journal diversity topic, there are a lot of things which are happening, right? So consider US, there it's on its own trajectory per se. Europe obviously has its own tangent. How do you think has this journal diversity topic changed, or what has kind of what are the updates that happened recently? If you have some facts and numbers around it, that would be good to know as well.
Yeah, to be honest, it has not much has changed. Yeah,
Hmm.
so it's everybody is talking about it, but not much has changed. And let's honestly focus on kind of our field, kind of around startups and VC. And we haven't seen so much progress on the VC side as well as on the startup side. Unfortunately, there's no data on LGBTQ, particularly in Europe. There's a little data on the US. But if you take as a proxy kind of gender, that kind of VC in VC, the senior level stagnates almost. So for the last 10 years, I think it has risen from 9 to somewhere 14, 15%, which
Hmm.
is ridiculous. If you project that, when do we have parity? It's way, way, way forward. And even goes in the wrong direction. So in Germany, the number of female startup founders has decreased from
Hmm.
21 to 19%. So actually, there's not much progress, but how does it come that everybody is talking about it and not
Yep.
much is happening?
Yep.
And honestly, one of the main reasons, or my opinion, is kind of that everybody's talking about it, that there is some institutional LPs who bring that topic on the table. So for them, it's they added another box to talk about. But on the other hand, there's a lot focusing on transparency, or call
Hmm.
it bureaucracy, and not much on progress. The whole stuff about ESG is there is a lot of administration, but
Okay.
at the end, nobody cares about if you make a positive impact. And
Okay.
I think there's a mental problem when it comes to diversity. So it's good that institutional clients are pushing that forward, but if they're only pushing bureaucracy, it will not lead to any result. So I hope that so suddenly people get more aware of that, and that will change in the future.
Okay. So if we kind of paint this picture of this value chain, venture capital value chain, obviously it starts with the inflows, right? From the LP side, from the institutional sides. And this is where you are kind of focusing the issue of just tick marking a checkbox and not really putting their word behind the true focus on diversity. So they're not focusing on whether there's tangible kind of results year on year. They're more focusing on maybe having, I don't know, some conclaves, right? Some discussions around it, but not taking it forward. What do you think needs to happen, especially in terms of LPs and institutionals or corporates that can move the needle on this side?
I think, first of all, a change in terms of impact. And secondly, also the insight that something needs to change. You cannot continue the same things if you want to see some change. And take the large institutional, primarily public funds who are driving the topic. They want to see more, let's say, female investors, more migrants. So they want to see more diversity. On the other hand, they expect new GPs to have ideally 10 years of track record. And this is not going to work. So that's bullshit. So if you want to change that, you cannot expect, because there's only male, logically, because there was male founders who have done good exits and might become GPs or from other industries. So if you want to see more diversity, you need to rethink your requirements. You can have very strict requirements, but the traditional requirements don't work anymore, or they lead to no results. So you need to rethink how you target, how you evaluate, and how you support more diverse GPs. And the same is true on the startup side.
Okay. And so if we keep the focus on this topic of LPs, right? Do you think there should be a bucket per se focused on? I'm not saying diverse, VCs, but in general, emerging VCs. Let's say. Do you think that will help kind of uplifting the whole topic of diversity in general? Having a separate bucket of capital.
At the end, it's kind of, for private investors, it's up to them. So what they think. There's data that emerging VCs are performing better. On the other hand, large institutional clients are very hesitant when it comes to emerging managers. So, but that's a private decision. But that's exactly the point where, in my opinion, that would be a mandate for the public funds, because they should not, and they still do, support the large established funds. I think that's not a public mandate. So they should support the upcoming, the niches where there is support needed, with the vision that the support is not anymore needed, whatever, in 5 or 10 years. So that's exactly, from my perspective, the mandate of public institutions, to kind of help to overcome some disadvantages, create a level playing field, and then withdraw and focus on another area. That could be in terms of managers, that could be in terms of regions, that could be in terms of topics. Yeah, let's honestly, I would say there's no need to support green tech. So there's a lot of money flowing into green tech.
Yes.
If you look at social impact, there's not much money flowing into that. So they're both kind of impact areas, but with very, very different need in terms of support to bring them to a certain level where they are self-sustainable.
Got it. And one more question regarding the same topic of LP. So let's take out the evaluation and actually giving money to GPs. Let's take one step even before that, right? So in terms of support or maybe guidance, do you think there could be some program which helps guide emerging managers, diversity focused managers in general to excel in their venture capital game? As you rightly said, most of the emerging managers, obviously the word emerging says itself, they don't have a 10-year track record, so they might need some support. And for the lack of better word, I'm using the word support over here, but there could be some program which kind of acts as a guiding mechanism for emerging managers, and it could be from private or public, but what shape it could take is the question here.
Honestly, support is always good, and that is also needed. And kind of if it's mentoring from experienced investors, if it's kind of whatever programs. But smart managers get this information, get the help, and get the mentoring.
Got it.
We don't need babysitting, to be honest. That's not necessary. An investor who needs help with the ropes, I would say, he should not do that. That's a signal not if you're not able yourself to get that support and the knowledge you need. And there's so much out there. There's great initiatives, so you can build on. I don't say it's not needed that you need that, but there is no need for more. Yeah, you can get that. And honestly, many people are very open to help. So I would not say that this is the bottleneck. The bottleneck is more the structural than kind of to have them invest. There's good emerging managers out there. But the question is, are they able to raise their first fund so that they can prove and then kind of get self-sustainable in the future?
Got it. So it's more about the raising the first fund rather than support itself.
Yeah.
Last question in this direction. So you said your fund's focus is not just Europe, but also beyond, right? If you have to compare from obviously your data, your information, from what you're hearing, the US and the European side of diversity, how would you differentiate it? Is there some kind of parallels that you can draw? Would you see that both are going in a completely different direction right now? Would you say as one is better in some areas than the other? How would you paint the picture here?
That's an interesting question because I would say the US is a few years ahead, yeah, in terms of the whole diversity topic. Yeah, so when it comes to recruiting, but also in terms of investing.
Okay.
So it's much more established and much more part of the regular kind of process is also to factor in diversity. And I do like their more pragmatic approach. So to just incorporate that as just another dimension. When I look at the results, though, I have some questions. I just checked it before our podcast. So senior female representation, unfortunately, again, there's no data on LGBTQ, but a senior female representation in VC funds is 12%, which is lower than in Europe. And they have kind of talked about the topic much earlier. So I don't know what is the better approach. But I would love to see maybe kind of more competition around how that can be achieved. And honestly, if there's different approaches, because nobody has found the golden needle yet. So it's a topic which has not been solved. So I can only encourage my industry, my peers, and I include myself, let's be creative and find ways how we can solve it. So far, we haven't.
Got it. It's a nice segue into the next segment. So, till now, we have focused on the journal diversity topic and how it impacts the venture capital ecosystem. Now, we want to go down one step further and focus on the founders themselves, right? Because obviously, they are the customers. VCs are doing all of this for them in a way. What do you think is the biggest challenges faced by diverse founders? And please, if you have any founder stories, let us know.
I would say there's no particular challenge. Of course, as a VC, you always have the challenge of unconscious biases. And that's along multiple dimensions. And that's a big challenge as a VC to avoid that. And I have the feeling some VCs are not aware of that. So, but those who are, that's always a struggle to kind of have a neutral attitude. At the end, the pressure is on the money side at the moment. There is a lot of money out there that needs to be deployed. So I don't think there's a much of a disadvantage, particularly for so-called underrepresented founders. Or at least it is smaller than some of us guess, because there's a study in the UK that 75% of the LGBTQ founders hide their sexual orientation to some extent from investors, and which is definitely not good, because it shows that obviously there's something wrong in the relationship, and there is something wrong in terms of trust. So that needs to change. And I think it's a responsibility on both sides. First of all, I can only encourage founders to be very open about it, because you don't want to have an asshole on your cap table. So that might not be relevant when everything works fine, but when there is kind of bumpy times, then you really need to have a trusted relationship. And then you don't want to have somebody on your cap table who doesn't share your values. So make sure you select properly and choose your investors wisely. Vice versa, I think it's also kind of the responsibility of the investors to make sure that this kind of level of trust can happen and that they can build kind of the trust. So it's not only one way, it's also kind of both way. There's an interesting, and that's a small thing, but there's kind of an interesting study by McKinsey that says 50% of LGBTQ employees have to come out once a week. And everybody who's LGBTQ knows that. And it really sucks. Yeah. It's not that's an issue, but kind of you always have to fucking explain you. And it's just annoying. And sometimes it's even awkward, yeah, because you need to create a situation to make clear, no, my wife is a husband. And so that's strange. And you need to create situations where you get away of this awkwardness and where you build a trusted relationship between VCs and startups, where people feel comfortable also to disclose that kind of things. You don't need to be best friends, but you need to have kind of level of personal relationship. And from my perspective, that includes that you at least know a little bit about the person next to you.
Yeah, true. From the awareness side of the founders regarding how to raise, how to build their startups in general, have you ever heard from diverse founders that they lack certain level of awareness in comparison to other folks? They don't know something, they don't have access to the right networks or the right folks. People talk a lot about cold email outreach versus, like connections who can make things possible. What do you think about all of those areas regarding challenges for founders themselves?
That's an interesting point. It's a very interesting point, because that shows the problem of this industry. So the large VCs tell you need a warm intro. What actually they tell you, we only want to invest in our friends and the friends of our friends. So that means kind of, and what is currently statistic, the fact that, don't say old, let's say middle-aged, wealthy, white, heterosexual men invest in privileged, white, heterosexual young men. And if you tell you need to talk to my friends and have an warm intro, you say, I only want to talk to people and invest in people in my broader kind of network. And that's exactly not understood the issue. And that's kind of coming back what we said before. So if you want to invest in founders they are not in your network, and they're not the friends of your friends, and they haven't studied at the same universities, and they might not have that privileged background, and they're not going whatever hilly skiing with you on whatever you do, and they're not spending the winter in South Africa enjoying the rich man's life, then you need to look somewhere different. And these people don't have the access, and they're not the friends of your friends. So if you really want diversity, you need to open up for that. Having said that, I can either accuse kind of the incumbents in the industry, or I say, thank you, great opportunity for us. There's a lot of super cool founders you never come across. Thank you for leaving that aside. Big opportunity for us and a great investment opportunity.
Okay, awesome. Good to hear that you see the ecosystem that ways. In terms of knowledge, have you come across any founder saying that, hey, there is something that I'm missing over here? Not all founders, not all diverse founders are coming from a background where they have a complete understanding of how to build a startup, right? So maybe some of them are working in corporates and they are doing their regular 9 to 5 to 6 kind of job, right? They might lack certain knowledge and how to build, how to go about it, how to find a co-founder, what is PMF and all this kind of simpler topics, yet it's all included in the awareness section, right? Do you have some programs within your Identity VC in which you cater to these kind of awareness challenges within the founders?
Maybe it's a bit of the same is true also from the founder side as it is for the investor side. That if you lack the awareness, then you shouldn't start a startup. So if you don't have the knowledge, you find your way to get this information. And that's kind of what I would expect from a good founder, to find that out and find your ways. And so, of course, it either could be programs. There is good programs, accelerator programs. They exactly do that. And honestly, you can see that's a difference to the US. If you have them from whatever US accelerators like Y Combinators, people coming from there, they know how it works, how to tell a story, how to talk to investors, and they have exactly learned what you need. And honestly, in Europe, we're still lacking these programs. They're not as good. Yeah. So if I compare that, they're not as really kind of telling them what is really required. Having said that, kind of part of this to get the knowledge you need is building a community and leveraging your community, because that's exactly what happens all the time. You don't have the expertise, you don't have the knowledge. So community is key when you're a founder. You can be a solo founder, I don't care, but you cannot be alone. So you need to have a network of people who help you or you can consult to solve these questions. And here, the LGBTQ community, by the way, is a great community. And some of the LGBTQ founders are not even aware of that kind of unique advantage they have, that there is a community that goes across borders, that goes across any silos, across industries, across hierarchies. And this is a huge, huge, huge value. And that's exactly where you can kind of close the gaps you have, the knowledge gaps, the expertise gaps, kind of your network, to expand your network, to get access to certain circles, to corporates, to whatever. And that's what I would say kind of is a big advantage of any founder who has a chance to get into any kind of community or network. So, and there's multiple networks, and you should use all your networks. Is it kind of the LGBTQ community? Is it from your university? Whatever chance you have, use that, because that's kind of the backing as a founder you need to give you access to the resources that are crucial to raise a startup.
Yeah, good to hear. Do you think the role of mentors and advisors, not just for the startups themselves, but for founders also, does it play a role for diverse founders?
As it does for non-diverse founders.
True.
Absolutely. It's so important because as a founder, you're pretty alone because there are some discussions, some things you cannot discuss with your team, even if you have a very open relationship with your team. There's some questions you can't. And that's why it's so important to have these mentors and people who also give you quite open feedback. And feedback you don't want to hear from your investor, you don't want to hear from your employees, or as an investor you shouldn't give, as an employee you shouldn't give. But this is why you should have mentors who give you the feedback. And nobody is perfect, so I guess everybody needs that.
Okay. How should founders go about it? Because I have heard, I'm not sure whether you have heard or not, but I have heard some diverse founders saying, hey, I lack the right way to reach out to find the mentors. And what I suggest all the time is sometimes it's a numbers game, right? Not everyone will kick. You need to make that effort to be out there, be present, you know. Um, Choose your setting. For example, even if you're presenting your startup at any event, it's a nice opportunity. Someone might walk up to you and say, hey, you know what, I'm happy to guide you, support you. In other cases, feel free to reach out to the right person on LinkedIn or maybe somewhere else that you feel might be helpful to you. Apart from that, how do you suggest that founders reach out to their mentors and advisors?
Again, here's good if you're part of a community. I would say any LGBTQ founder, I know many kind of
Hmm.
experienced LGBTQ founder, entrepreneurs who are very, very willing to mentor, who support.
Good to hear.
So there is, and I would say almost all founders who have come through that know how important that is, and that results in a willingness also to give back. So there is enough people there, and how to connect. So we have created an online community where we connect people. That
Okay.
could be one way. The other one is just, and that's something. Come to your investor and ask if it's not. It's a different relationship than the investor. So I'm not kind of the mentor. I'm an investor. I can help. I can do sparring. I can give input. But
Okay.
at the end, I'm an investor. So it should be a different person who's a bit more neutral. But I can only encourage founders to come to us and happy to connect them. But that's kind of when it comes to what do we need? We need
Mhm.
platforms to make that happen and to connect people. So we have this online platform. We do a lot of offline events.
Okay.
We had a CEO roundtable for LGBTQ CEOs together with EY. And that was fantastic because we
Wow.
had board members of multinational companies and, on
Mhm.
the other hand, first-time founders. And we brought together people who had never met before,
Mhm.
and it was beneficial for both. And we see our role kind of apart from the investing also to create that platform
Okay.
and that structure for the LGBTQ community to let that kind of magic happen and matching. And for example, we'll do in next week, we plan to do a summit where we will bring together LGBTQ founders and investors, and just to do exactly this, bring people together, ideally get people good relationships,
Yeah.
coaching relationships. It could be also peer-to-peer coaching, by the way, because sometimes it's good just to spar with somebody who's in exactly the same position as you are and just get another opinion, and or just to sound
Yeah.
your opinion. Even if it's just confirmation that you're right, it helps a lot. If you,
True.
it's not only me who thinks this is the right way. There's a second person who kind of supports me, and that's very important. That's the kind of the support you need as founder.
Awesome. So all the best for the next week, right? So as I hear it correctly, it's not just for your portfolio founders, but it's in general. So it's open doors
Yes,
to other founders as well.
yeah, we see our role kind of in being a catalyst for an LGBTQ, for European LGBTQ startup, investor, and founder
Awesome.
community. Yeah, because we are a relatively small fund, so we will do 25 to 30 investments. So in the majority of startups, we're not investing. Just we can't invest in everybody. So, but we see our role that it's also on us to create that kind of community, to create that platform. And we also kind of committed part that we spend part of our management fee exactly to do that and to support the community here.
Awesome. And so it's a perfect segue into the next question, because a lot of founders, I hate to use the word complain, that they say that we have been rejected. So now what? And from the VC side, from the GP side, obviously the time is a constraint, right? We cannot give feedback to all the founders. So where's this match? Where does this all connect? In your case, I assume there is this sessions, offline kind of meetups, which helps this peer-to-peer connect. So for example, if somebody's getting rejected, they still have the chance to kind of connect with the peer, get the feedback and so on. But from the investor side, from your side, you said majority of the startups you don't invest in. And so the difficult question would be, what do you do about them? How do you kind of provide
Honestly,
them a feedback so they do a good job next time?
That's a very good question, and that's also a very delicate question because at the end, happy to give also open feedback, and sometimes it has nothing to do. First of all, sometimes has nothing to do with the startup. So sometimes it's just portfolio kind of construction. So you have another company in your portfolio does the same, or the proportion you have for that certain region is already full, or whatever. Yeah. So it has nothing to do. Number one. Number two is there's a huge likelihood that we are also wrong. It says nothing about your startup. So it's kind of what we think kind of is that could be wrong. Hopefully we are, in more cases, we are right than wrong, because also missed opportunity for us is a big problem. And for a VC, it's sometimes an even bigger problem to miss an opportunity rather than to do a wrong investment, because you then just write off, but that does not pay back your fund. And then when it comes to feedback, that's a tricky part, because you try to be very open and transparent, but then sometimes you get in endless discussions, which is honestly useless. We have taken a decision, and so we're happy to give the feedback why, but there's no point in discussing it because it won't change anything. So, and honestly, that's what holds you a bit back from giving too much feedback, because then this is, honestly, we might be wrong, but we have taken a decision, and a decision is a decision, and happy to give you our rationale. And I love if I'm wrong all the startups I reject. So I would love to see if they are all successful, and if we would have hundreds of successful LGBTQ founders in the future who do great exits. Would be perfect.
Yeah, and nice to hear. And I think from founder side, I think they could be more pragmatic, because I keep on hearing such stories that founders are trying to be pushy, or like being very forthright and saying, why did you reject me, something of this sort.
Being pushy is fine. Being pushy is fine. That's all good. But at the point is, you can also kind of question something. But at the end, there's no point to discuss too much, because honestly, if we've taken a decision, we've taken a decision.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, beforehand, there's a process behind, and within the process, there's a lot of discussion, and there you can also ask as a founder for concerns. By the way, nobody does, so they always are in the sales mode rather than what are your big. Honestly, that could, by the way, that's as we talk, that could be really helpful, kind of in the process, already knowing, okay, these are the two reasons why they might not invest. And honestly, when you look at a startup, you start with a hypothesis, and this is kind of, these are reasons why we would invest, these are reasons why we would not invest. And then you start to do the research, and you dig deeper, and to hopefully confirm the reasons why you would invest, and to erase the reasons why you would not invest. So, and maybe a bit more transparency also, kind of looking at ourselves, could be help along the process.
Awesome. Let's change the rhythm, and I want to ask a difficult question. keeping the focus on founders
Sure.
itself. So what I hear from the ecosystem sometimes, some of the founders, is that we don't care about the capital, where it's coming from, whether it's from a diverse VC or not. We just care about the money that is invested in us, right? So how do you kind of rationalize this statement in context of identity VC?
First of all, you should definitely not care only about the money, because this is what you need in first hand, of course. That's what a VC is for.
Yeah.
But you should also think about, is that the right VC that can help me to do the next round? Always keep that in mind. So if I want to go to the US in the next step, it's good to have a VC that can help me to get to the US or to get the inroad to the US VC. So you always need to think about who's a good VC, thinking about the next round. And secondly, also, when times get bumpy, then it's not suddenly not about money anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's about trust and understanding. And I can only tell you from my own experience, if you have a VC that does not understand your product and kind of the implication it comes with, that can kill a company. So this is so for Vantic, we had exactly that situation. So we had we went out fundraising in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. So suddenly all fans stopped to look outside and looked inside. So the only chance was there to raise a round from your existing investors. And when then your investors suddenly try to understand your business model and try to understand their risk, then it's too late. So make sure first of all, your investor understand your product properly and all the implications. There's no right or wrong, but they need to have good understanding what it means and what's the future capital need, how the product works and what are the implications and the risk. Secondly, also look that they can help you. And thirdly, what I was referring before, have an investor that shares your value. Choose your investor wisely. You don't want to have an asshole on your cap table.
Yep.
Again, very important, and that's the way I say it. I mean
it's
it.
a long-term relationship, right?
Exactly. So that's why diversity, and honestly, when it comes to stuff like what you can bring, don't forget the community. So what kind of value is kind of fundraising, operational support, network, and so. But what community, what networks can give you an investor?
Sounds good. How do you see the evolution of the diversity-focused VC funds in the future? Let's say 3 years, 5 years down the line. How do you see the future of the funds?
Currently, it's a niche. And the reason why kind of it is, and particularly if you compare it to green investing, which is huge, and everybody wants to invest in green tech. So when it comes to the S and ESG, it's super small. And I'm convinced that the reason is that many LPs have a wrong theory of change.
Okay.
Because their theory of change is that the businesses that are invested in need to fulfill a social impact. And that means they're either philanthropic or they're super niche and economically not very attractive. And this is why, from my perspective, this theory of change needs to completely change. And you need to, as a social investing, you need to invest into underrepresented founders. And if you want to, LGBTQ founders need to cope about the LGBTQ community. Yes, this is good and this is great. There's also good startups who do that. But we want to see LGBTQ founders who solve the burning problems of this world to help the broader mankind be successful founders. And same is true for migrant founders, for female founders. So this creates social change, and not that minority does a product for the minority of a minority. Yeah. So, and then it's hardly, there's hardly draw a line to charity or philanthropic investing. So if we want to see at large scale investing in diversity, and if you believe in the fact that diversity is a business case, then you need to change your theory of change and truly believe in support the people you want to support in what they are up to.
Yeah.
And that would be a significant change to diversity investing. And I think that could be a breakthrough. So far, we are way, way far away from that.
Unfortunately, we are far away. And I think you said it perfectly, that we need to focus on the vision of those founders. We don't need to kind of compartmentalize so much that we just focus on diversity and in a bucket, and then those VCs just focus on that bucket. We need to focus on people with bigger visions who can support the whole humanity as such. So perfectly said, Til. In the last, I always ask this question to all the podcast invitees. Have you read any interesting, inspirational thing or idea recently which you would like to share with the audience? Apart from the VCs world, it would be fine. We talked around 50
we
minutes
talked a lot
about
about
VC, right?
funding and VC. Let's stay in the area because I came across one idea from one of our venture partners,
Okay.
Raymond, and he brought up an idea, and I was like, why didn't we have the idea before? And he said, kind of, for startups, it's a big challenge to get into large corporates.
Mm-hmm.
So it's typically a black box and very difficult to get in. And his idea was, why don't we bring startups together with the pride networks in the large corporates, which are kind of independent from hierarchy, which gives you typically very open to collaborate. At least you have an inroad. And why not matching startup with corporates, the pride network of the corporates, to make that an advantage? And I love the idea. I think this is a brilliant idea. I don't know why we've seen that before, but better now than never. And so we're gonna try that. There will be a first event in Amsterdam where we do exactly the matching of startups and corporate pride networks to get them their kind of their own network in the corporates. And I think it's a brilliant showcase of how a community can really be your unfair advantage as a founder.
Amazing idea. So when will you execute it? This year, 2025?
I don't know if it's still happening this year or very early next year. Kind of, we're still in the process to schedule the event, but we will definitely communicate it also via social media channels. So,
but it's happening. Awesome.
It's definitely happening. And so happy to join our social media channel, follow us on social media, or also kind of write us if you are an LGBTQ investor or founder, and register for the League. We call it the League of Unicorns, which is a Slack channel of like-minded people. And so that is kind of this networking, but also is to stay up to date on what's going on and where there is great opportunities to network and learn about content.
Great initiative, Til. So really looking forward, excited about the event, happy to support it. Fingers crossed that it goes like in an amazing way. Happy to spread the word around. And thank you so much for joining in and sharing your thoughts and ideas with the audience. Thank you so much. Take care for the day and all the best.
Thank you for having me.